Georgia's big matchup with Clemson is finally about to arrive, and it's been talked about for months. But what I want to talk about today is how is Georgia's defense going to shape up against Clemson's offense? This isn't the same Clemson offensive unit of the last couple of years that was led by Heisman finalist and national championship winning quarterback Trevor Lawrence, who ended up being the #1 pick in the draft. It's completely different. I want to talk about that today. The offense is going to be led by, and I don't want to mispronounce his name. I'm going to refer to him as DJ for the rest of the video, but I'll make one attempt. DJ Uiagalelei. If I said that right or wrong, please let me know in the comments. But anyway, Clemson's offense will be led by DJU, a nickname that he's been given. So it's completely different from the last couple of years. So Georgia's defense, how are they going to match up with them? Ryan Curley here from Dog Post, bringing you some details and some commentary and some insight on this topic. And, I'm looking at the rosters, I'm looking at the stats, things that I think are important to look at for this game. I want to talk about Clemson's offense a little bit. With Trevor Lawrence being out a couple of games last season, COVID-related stuff, DJ actually got to start a couple of games. Those two games being against Boston, a not very good Boston College team, and then a Notre Dame team that they ended up losing to, and then the Clemson eventually beat them later on in the ACC championship with Trevor Lawrence at the helm. But when DJ was in there, they did lose in overtime, 40-47. But I want to talk about, I watched a lot of film on him and their offense the last couple of days. And, he's good. He was a 5-star for a reason. He was the #2 quarterback in the 2020 class behind Alabama's Bryce Young. So it's not like obviously Trevor Lawrence was a generational talent, but it's not as big of a step down as maybe it's made out to be. This kid has talent. He has a rocket for an arm. But I want to kind of dive into the stats a little bit of his 2 starts last year. And I watched the highlights as well, and something that I noticed is that Travis Etienne was a huge part of the offense in those 2 games. And obviously he was a huge part of the offense regardless, but in those 2 games specifically, Travis Etienne was very involved in the passing game. Against Notre Dame, he had 8 receptions for 57 yards. 8 is not an insignificant number, guys, especially for a running back. And then against Boston College, he actually had 7 receptions for 140 yards and a touchdown, so he was actually the leading receiver that day for Clemson. And DJ relied on him a lot in little screen passes, little wheel routes, little dump-offs to get some production out of a guy like that. Travis Etienne isn't on the football team anymore, and that's what needs to be remembered. He's off in the NFL. Unfortunately, he's injured and probably isn't going to play this season in the NFL, but he's off with Trevor Lawrence down in Jacksonville. He's not on this football team anymore. My point being, Trevor Lawrence and Travis Etienne, who were the 2 biggest pieces of the Clemson offense of the last 3 years, are not on the team anymore. It's a new look. It's a completely different ball game for this Georgia defense. As I'm watching tape on DJ Uiagalelei, if I pronounce that right, they need to get some pressure on him. They really need to get to him. I mean, he can stand in the pocket and deliver throws, and if he gets outside the pocket, he's very impressive throwing on the run across his body. I noticed that his balls can get a little wobbly on some of those throws, and they were on a lot of them, but he's not a kid without talent. He's someone who's obviously has some reps on him. It's not like this is going to be his first start ever against Georgia. It may be the best team that he's played to this date, but it's not his first start ever. So how's this Georgia defense going to match up? I'm looking down the roster, and there may be a couple injuries, notably to Tyke Smith. I think this is the most notable injury, and there were some departures. And this may not be the most cohesive defensive unit, especially in the back end and the secondary, but Georgia's got a lot of studs in that front 7, and that front 7 is going to be extremely important against Clemson. Getting to the quarterback, putting him under pressure, getting hits on him, that's going to be, I think, of the utmost importance in this game if this Georgia defense wants to slow down what could be a high-scoring Clemson offense. Obviously, in the 2 games that he started last year, they scored 40 and 34. Those are pretty great numbers. against not the worst teams in college football, and not necessarily the worst teams in the ACC either. As we know, Notre Dame was in the ACC for last year due to some COVID issues. But Georgia's defense, let's look down the list. Guys like Trayvon Walker, Adam Anderson, Quay Walker, Devontae Wyatt, Jordan Davis, these guys on the line and on the edge, they're going to have to get after DJ and make him force some pressure on him and not give him a lot of downfield looks. That's my opinion after watching the tape. Under pressure, he's not bad, but he's not amazing, and some of his ball accuracy is not as great when he's being pressured. And something that didn't happen was there wasn't a lot of pressure on him. Clemson's offensive line is keeping 3 out of the 5 starters from last year, so there's a little bit of turnover there. But I mean, if you just watch the clips, he wasn't pressured a ton, and he had a good amount of time. And if he was pressured a little bit, he was able to get out of the pocket. They need to keep him inside that pocket and get to him within a couple seconds to really fluster him and to not let it get to what is being considered a weaker secondary for Georgia. Maybe take some of the pressure off them. But Georgia has the guys to do it. Clemson does not have the same running back. They're not going to get the same production. At least I don't think. Who knows? This kid could break out. Dixon, he's a senior, and he was a third-string running back the last couple of years, and now he is the presumed starter. I'm assuming it's going to be some sort of committee, especially with a talent like Will Shipley back there, who was a highly touted recruit. So there's going to be – Georgia's got the talent to get to him. And that it needs to be said that this isn't the same Clemson offense. Obviously, I don't think Dixon is Travis Etienne. Travis Etienne was a top 2 or 3 back in college football the last couple of years, up there with Najee Harris, in my opinion, and it showed when he was drafted in the first round in the 2021 draft for the NFL. So this is a winnable game. I know Clemson's favored by 3.5, but this is a very winnable game for Georgia, and they need to put some pressure on this quarterback. He hasn't been in a primetime game against an SEC opponent. It will be a first for him, and he hasn't seen an SEC defensive line, and I think that's where Georgia can really take advantage in this game. Obviously, I think the offense is going to do its thing. I don't think the offense is as depleted as maybe it looks on paper with all these injuries, but the defense, just ignore the fact that the secondary doesn't have the cohesion or the experience. Ignore that for now. This front 7 is going to be very important in this game, shutting down any sort of run game that Clemson might get out of Dixon and other names, and really getting the pressure to DJ so he can't make a bunch of downfield plays. If the secondary is weaker, we're going to find out a lot about both of these teams in this game. Obviously, it's the first game of the season. All of it is speculation up to this point. But in my opinion, the front 7 is going to be extremely important in putting pressure on that quarterback, running back, that offensive line, and just really make them pay for it every game. I think that's going to be a huge key for Georgia to win this game, is to make sure they are getting to the quarterback, getting pressure, getting sacks, getting hits, hurries. I think that's going to be very important. I think making him run around. He hasn't played an SEC defensive line or defensive unit at all, and this is a first for him. And I think that's a very vital point in this game.